Buried deep in the corners of the 80s metal underground are bands that brought fury, fire, and unforgettable riffs, then disappeared without a trace. Today we're diving into 30 obscure metal bands from the 80s that every true fan of heavy music should know. And we're starting with one of the most otherworldly doom pioneers the decade ever produced. Number 30, Cirith Ungol. No band sounded or looked quite like Cirith Ungol. Formed in California in the early 70s, they didn't release their first album until 1981. But when Frost and Fire dropped, it didn't just announce them, it opened a portal. Their blend of doom, fantasy, and traditional heavy metal came from another realm entirely. By King of the Dead, they had embraced darker themes, weaving sword and sorcery imagery into songs like Atom Smasher and Master of the Pit. Their artwork, lifted straight from pulp novels, became as iconic as their sound. But Tim Baker's screeching vocals and unorthodox delivery split audiences. You either got it or you didn't. They never broke through, not even close. But decades later, Cirith Ungol's influence is everywhere in epic and doom metal. The world finally caught up with the weird. Number 29, Brokus Helm. Brokus Helm didn't care about fitting in. They weren't built for radio, labels, or mainstream anything. Formed in San Francisco in the early 80s, they carved out their legend with battered gear, self-funded sessions, and pure stubborn grit. Into Battle gave fans their first taste, lo-fi and unapologetic. But it was Defender of the Crown, packed with war anthems like Raven Wreck and Fly High, that sealed their place in underground lore. Their sound was messy, medieval, and somehow majestic. They built their following through tape trading and word of mouth, with fans treating every release like a relic. No polish, no compromise. Brokus Helm wasn't for everyone, but for a few they were everything. Number 28, Witchfind before doom had a dress code. Witchfind brought candles and shadows to the party. Formed in 1974 and landing right in the middle of the NWO BHM wave, they stood out for all the right reasons, and some wrong ones too. Give 'Em Hell set the tone with dark, atmospheric metal that leaned hard into the occult. Tracks like Leaving Nader and Big Deal were more seance than stadium rock. But as bands like Maiden and Saxon polished their edges, Witchfind kept things murky and strange. They never got the push. Too dark for glam, too weird for radio. But ask any doom purist or black metal historian, they'll tell you Witchfind started something no one else dared. Number 27, Sortilege. France didn't have a massive metal scene in the 80s, but it had Sortilege. Formed in Paris in 1981, they played with the drama of Dio, the precision of Maiden, and the flair of their own culture, delivered entirely in French. Metamorphose wasn't just an album, it was a statement. Tracks like D'ailleurs and Majesté were melodic, soaring, and unashamedly epic. When they tried to re-record in English, the fire dimmed. Their magic lived in their mother tongue. Sortilege faded as fast as they rose, but in the European underground, they're a royalty. And for many, no translation is needed when the music speaks warrior. Number 26, Hell War Chains before it was cool. Formed in Nottingham in the early 80s, they fused heavy metal with apocalyptic theater, like Merciful Fate colliding with Shakespeare. But just as they were starting to burn, tragedy struck. Their demos were fire. Tracks like Save Us from Those Who Would Save Us were fast, blasphemous, and strangely elegant. But the loss of frontman Dave Halliday in 1987 shattered their momentum. They vanished, a legend in whispers. Decades later, they rose again, picking up right where they left off. But those early recordings, they weren't just music. They were prophecies. Hell didn't just sing about damnation. They made it sound divine. Number 25, Manila Road. Some bands aim for the charts. Manila Road aimed for myth. Based in Wichita, Kansas, miles from any scene, they built a world of their own. Led by guitarist and storyteller Mark Shelton, they didn't just write songs. They told sagas. Albums like Crystal Logic and Open the Gates wove tales of ancient cities and fallen kings. Tracks like Necropolis and The Ninth Wave were heavy metal campfire stories told from the edge of a battlefield. They never fit in with the coastal crowds, and they didn't want to. Too weird for labels, too true for compromise. But for generations of epic metal fans, Manila Road isn't just a band, it's scripture. Number 24, Witchkiller. Witchkiller hit fast, burned bright, and disappeared just as quickly. Hailing from Canada, they dropped a single EP in 1984, Day of the Saxons, and vanished into the snow. But what an EP it was. Tracks like Riders of Doom and the title song dripped with NWO BHM energy, matched with fantasy lyricism and a raw bite that felt made for VHS sword fights. It was sharp, urgent, and just unrefined enough to be perfect. They never released a full album, no major tours, just whispers and reissues. But in true cult fashion, Witchkiller's name lives on, proof that even one great record can echo for decades. Number 23, Liege Lord. Liege Lord should have been massive. They had the speed, the hooks, and a voice that could call down thunder. Formed in Connecticut in 1982, they rode the US power metal wave with style and force. Their first two albums built the foundation, but it was Master Control that blew the doors off. With tracks like Eye of the Storm and their blazing cover of Kill the King, Liege Lord went full throttle into technical, melodic firepower. But timing wasn't kind. Power metal was waning in the US and grunge was on the rise. Liege Lord faded quietly. Today, that third album is a lost gem. Essential listening for anyone who likes their metal fast and fearless. Number 22, Chastain. Some bands chase radio, Chastain chased dragons. Founded by Shredmaster David T. Chastain in 1984, this project combined neoclassical guitar work with heavy metal muscle and the unmatched voice of Leather Leone. Albums like Ruler of the Wasteland and The Seventh have never showcased blistering solos and anthemic vocals. Tracks like Black Knight and Angel of Mercy became underground powerhouses led by Leather's battle cry and Chastain's fretboard acrobatics. They never got the spotlight, but they didn't need it. Among guitar geeks and power metal heads, Chastain remains a masterclass in technical fire and vocal fury. Number 21, Omen. While glam bands polished their hair and thrash bands sharpened their riffs, Omen brought out the war paint. Formed in Los Angeles in 1983, they delivered battle metal before it had a name. Their debut battle cry was a declaration of intent. Tracks like Death Rider and The Axeman charged forward with pounding drums and heroic grit. Follow-up albums like Warning of Danger kept the fire blazing, especially with cuts like Ruby Eyes of The Serpent. They never hit the mainstream, but they didn't care. Omen was built for blood, steel, and volume. And for many, they remain one of US power metal's fiercest champions. Number 20, Savage Grace. Savage Grace came in like a blade, fast, sharp, and just a little ahead of their time. Formed in Los Angeles in 1981, they blended the precision of speed metal with the rawness of underground thrash. Their debut, Master of Disguise, didn't just make noise, it roared. Songs like Fear My Way and After the Fall from Grace were pure combustion. High vocals, quicksilver solos, and a punkish intensity made them stand apart. But while the music hit hard, the spotlight never found them. Lineup changes and the usual label chaos pushed them off course. But dig into the archives, and you'll find a band that played like it had something to prove, because it did. Number 19, Agent Steel. Formed in LA in 1984, they injected speed metal with sci-fi paranoia and vocals that could pierce orbit. If Iron Maiden had been abducted by aliens, this is what it would have sounded like. Their debut, Skeptic's Apocalypse, came out swinging with tracks like Bleed for the Gods and 144,000 Gone. Then came Unstoppable Force, an album that sounded like it was dodging meteors. Tight, fast, obsessed. But they burned hot and brief. Internal frictions split the band, leaving just two classic albums and a cult legacy in their wake. For fans of fast, smart, and strange, Agent Steel is essential tinfoil hat metal. Number 18, Heathen If Bait. Number 18, Heathen, if Bay Area thrash had a thinking man's band, it was Heathen. Formed in 1984, they brought melody and musicianship into a scene that prized pure aggression. They didn't just thrash, they composed. Their debut, Breaking the Silence, dropped in 1987. Pairing razor riffing with hooks you could hum. Goblin's Blade and Death by Hanging showed off their dual guitar finesse, while Open the Grave proved they could get grim when needed. They never caught the big wave like Exodus or Testament. But among fans who like their thrash with a brain, Heathen earned deep respect and still do. Number 17, Vicious Rumors. Vicious Rumors came out of the Bay Area, but they weren't following anyone's script. Formed in 1980, they blended US power metal with technical precision, pounding rhythm, and a sense of drama that gave them their own lane. Their debut, Soldiers of the Night, was strong, but it was 1988's Digital Dictator that etched their name in stone. Songs like Worlds and Machines and Minute to Kill balanced melody with sheer firepower. This wasn't just fast, it was calculated destruction. They toured, they delivered, but they never hit the upper tier commercially. Still, Digital Dictator is a classic for those who like their metal tight, smart, and razor-edged. Number 16, Grim Reaper High Notes. Big solos, bigger choruses. Grim Reaper came in loud and stayed that way. Formed in the UK, they were part of the NWO BHM wave, but they played like they were headlining a stadium, even when they weren't. See You in Hell became an underground hit, thanks to its gloriously over-the-top video and Steve Grimmett's siren vocals. Albums like Fear No Evil and Rock You to Hell kept the fire going, with tracks like Night of the Vampire showing just how sharp their melodic edge could be. But legal battles and bad timing held them back. They never broke big, but they left behind songs that refused to die. Number 15, Tokyo Blade. Tokyo Blade had the sound, the style, and the songwriting, but somehow they missed the wave. Formed in 1982, they came out of the same UK metal scene that gave us Maiden and Saxon, with plenty of horsepower under the hood. Their early albums like Night of the Blade delivered galloping riffs and streetwise attitude. Lightning strikes straight through the heart, and Someone to Love hit with force and flair. They toured hard and played harder, but lineup chaos and poor management clipped their wings. Tokyo Blade never rose to the heights they should have. Today, they're a hidden gem from a golden age. Number 14, Fifth Angel. Fifth Angel was polished, melodic, precise. Formed in Seattle before grunge swallowed it whole, they stood out with soaring vocals and arena-sized hooks. More Queensryche than Slayer. Their self-titled 1986 debut came out swinging with songs like In the Fallout and Only the Strong Survive. Wrapped in production that gleamed like chrome, follow-up Time Will Tell kept the momentum with tracks like 7 Hours pushing toward the big leagues. But the timing was wrong. Just as they were peaking, the scene shifted. Still, for fans of high-flying melodic American metal, Fifth Angel remains a crown jewel. Number 13, Villain. Some bands get a whole career. Villain got one perfect shot. Formed in the mid-'80s and gone before most could blink, they left behind Only Time Will Tell, a 5-track EP that hit harder than albums twice its length. Kamikaze was the standout. Sharp, fast, and dripping with NWO BHM influence. Just Close Your Eyes and She'll Make You Fall showed they could pivot between aggression and melody without flinching. No tour, no follow-up. Just 5 songs and a cult reputation that's only grown since. For collectors and tape traders, Villain is one of the holy grails. Number 12, Anvil. Anvil helped invent the future. They just didn't get invited to enjoy it. Formed in Toronto in the late 70s, they dropped Metal on Metal in 1982, a blueprint for what speed and thrash would become. Mothra, Jackhammer, and the title track were heavy, fast, and bursting with energy.
In the car, you're ready to move.
Metallica and Slayer sang their praises, but bad timing and worse management left Anvil spinning their wheels in the underground. They finally got some recognition decades later with The Story of Anvil, a documentary that showed how much they'd given and lost. But back in the 80s, Anvil was the future, hidden in plain sight. Number 11, Cloven Hoof. Cloven Hoof never just played metal, they played mythology. Formed in Wolverhampton, England in the early 80s, they built their identity around elemental personas, occult themes, and full-throttle fantasy. Their 1984 self-titled debut hit hard with tracks like Crack the Whip and Laying Down the Law. Then came Dominator and A Sultan's Ransom, albums that pushed them deeper into power metal territory without losing their theatrical core. They never got the love their peers did, but their blend of mysticism and muscle won them a cult following. For fans of concept-heavy classic metal, Cloven Hoof remains pure gold. 20 bands deep and we're still just scratching the surface. How many of these names were new to you, or did we just resurrect a long-lost favorite? Drop it in the comments, because the last 10 are where things get even louder. Number 10, Loudness. If the global metal scene had been more fair, Loudness would have been a household name by now. Formed in Japan in 1981, they weren't just the first Asian metal band to break into the US market. They were one of the few that actually earned their way in with nothing but skill. Guitarist Akira Takasaki played like a man possessed. His solos on Crazy Nights, Heavy Chains, and Let It Go weren't just fast, they were melodic missiles, full of Japanese flair and Western muscle. The band's 1985 album Thunder in the East stormed MTV and earned them a cult following almost overnight. But timing was cruel. Just as they gained momentum, the glam scene exploded and swallowed everything in rhinestones. Despite dropping killer follow-ups and touring hard, Loudness faded from the US spotlight. Still, for anyone who actually listened, they weren't a novelty. They were contenders. And today, their legacy echoes far louder than the charts ever showed. Number 9, Lizzie Borden Blood, blades, and blistering solos, Lizzie Borden didn't just want your ears, they wanted your attention. Formed in Los Angeles in 1983 and named after the notorious axe murder legend, this band blurred the line between horror theater and metal mania. Where other glam bands teased menace, Lizzie Borden fully committed. Their live shows were drenched in fake blood, decapitations, and stage antics straight from a slasher flick. But behind the spectacle was serious substance. Albums like Love You to Pieces and Menace to Society delivered furious anthems like Give 'Em the Axe and American Metal. Then came Me Against the World, a rare crossover hit featured in the cult horror film Black Roses. But despite the talent, MTV traction, and a loyal fan base, the band was caught in the crossfire of a glam metal implosion. They never got the glory they deserved. But for those who saw through the theatrics, Lizzie Borden was the real deal. Bloody, brilliant, and unforgettable. Number 8, Jag Panzer. Some bands carved their legend in platinum. Jag Panzer carved theirs in iron. Hailing from Colorado and formed in 1981, they were US power metal royalty before most even knew the genre had a throne. Their 1984 debut, Ample Destruction, wasn't just an album, it was a declaration of war. With License to Kill, Generally Hostile, and Warfare, they blended speed, precision, and melody with a vocalist, Harry the Tyrant Conklin, who sounded like he could split mountains. But the scene wasn't ready. They got lost between glam's sparkle and thrash's chaos. Labels fumbled, tours sputtered. And for a while, they vanished into collectors' bins and whispered praise. Then the internet happened. A new generation unearthed Ample Destruction, and suddenly Jag Panzer became more than a cult band. They became a standard. Reunions followed, albums followed, but that early fire still burns brightest, carried by those who never forgot the kings that almost were. Number 7, Malice. Malice had everything on paper, dual guitars sharp as daggers, a powerhouse frontman, and the kind of sound that split the difference between Priest's polish and Metallica's might. Formed in California in 1982, they were poised to be the next breakout band from the Sunset Strip, until they weren't. Their debut in the beginning brought a thunderous punch. Stellar Masters, License to Kill, and Gods of Thunder weren't just catchy, they were commanding. They had swagger, muscle, and all the raw voltage the 80s demanded. Then came License to Kill, the album. A more refined effort with big choruses and tighter arrangements that should have catapulted them into heavy rotation. But the scene was overcrowded, and the industry, as always, picked favorites. Malice got passed over. Still, they left behind a pair of albums that rival the best from that era. If there's justice in metal history, Malice won't stay forgotten much longer. Number 6, Stormwitch. Imagine a metal band writing horror stories under moonlight, then performing them in velvet capes under stage fog. That was Stormwitch. Formed in 1981 in Germany, they weren't just musicians. They were conjurers of gothic fantasy, wrapping classic heavy metal around dark fairy tales and medieval dread. Dubbed the Masters of Black Romantic, their early albums like Walpurgis Night and Stronger Than Heaven blurred the line between hammer horror and headbanging bliss. Tracks like Rats in the Attic, Eye of the Storm, and Stronger Than Heaven were equal parts eerie and electric. While their peers were playing biker bars, Stormwitch performed like they were on the steps of a haunted castle. They built a loyal cult following across Europe, but never crossed over commercially. Still, for fans of theatrical, narrative-driven metal, Stormwitch is a revelation, one dark melody away from a ghost story set to riffs. Number 5, Riot. No band wore the phrase criminally underrated quite like Riot. Formed in New York in the mid-70s, they were always a few steps ahead, and a few inches from glory. From hard rock to speed metal, Riot evolved without losing their edge. Fire Down Under kicked off the 80s with punchy anthems like Swords and Tequila and Outlaw. Gritty blue-collar metal that should have been arena staples. But they weren't done. In 1988, they returned with Thundersteel, a high-speed reinvention that blurred the lines between American power metal and European precision. The title track alone? Lightning on tape. But Riot's journey was plagued by tragedy and lineup chaos. They were dropped, forgotten, and rediscovered more than once. Through it all, they kept playing, kept writing, and kept winning over those who gave them a chance. Riot didn't ask for your attention, they earned it. One riff at a time. Number 4, Candlemass. Candlemass didn't just play doom metal, they defined it. Chiseled it from granite, wrapped it in robes, and had it speak in oracles. Formed in Sweden in 1984, they took Sabbath's gloom and elevated it into operatic grandeur. Their 1986 debut Epicus Doomicus Metallicus wasn't just heavy, it was cathedral-level crushing. Solitude and Demon's Gate dripped with despair. Carried by haunting riffs and theatrical vocals. Then came Nightfall, and with it Messiah Marcolin, a baritone in monk robes, singing Bewitched like he was casting spells between funeral hymns. Candlemass moved slowly, but every note mattered. They weren't interested in trends, they were building temples of sorrow. And while mainstream radio turned the other way, generations of doom bands lit their candles from the fire these Swedes started. Candlemass didn't need to shout. They let the weight of their sound speak for itself. Number 3, Slaughter Extroys. With a name that looked like a typo and music that sounded like madness on fire, Slaughter Extroys was never meant for the mainstream. Formed in Chicago in the early 80s, they dropped one album, Winter Kill, and it was enough to bend reality. Their sound? A surreal collision of progressive shifts, manic vocals, and complex rhythms. Songs like Winter Kill, Mother, Mother, and Wicked Bitch twisted and turned like a fever dream. There was structure, somewhere, but you had to fight through the chaos to find it. They were too weird for glam, too smart for thrash, and too heavy for prog. Labels didn't know what to do with them. Fans, however, did. They embraced the insanity, passed it hand to hand, and kept it alive. Today, Winter Kill is a cult classic, and Slaughter Extroys remains one of the greatest what-if stories in metal. Number 2, The Rods. The Rods were what happened when working-class grit met Marshall Stacks. Formed in New York in 1980, they brought raw, no-nonsense energy to a scene that was getting slicker by the day. While others chased trends, the Rods just turned it up. Albums like Wild Dogs delivered with hammer fist simplicity. Songs like Crank It Up, Hurricane, and Power Lover weren't reinventing metal, but they didn't need to. This was music for garages, dive bars, and blacktop highways. It was loud, loose, and ready for a fight. They opened for bigger acts, toured relentlessly, and never lost their underdog bite, but they stayed cult, too stubborn to play the game, too real to be forgotten. The Rods didn't chase a crown. They just showed up, plugged in, and earned your respect. Number 1. In Destroy. Some bands flirt with chaos. In Destroy married it and set the house on fire. Formed in Washington, D.C. in 1985, they were a thrash band with zero filter, speed, rage, and social commentary, all jammed into a blender with the lid off. Their self-titled debut hit like a riot. Songs like Dead Girls Don't Say No and USSA didn't just slap, they sneered. Raw production, snarling vocals, and riffs that slammed like broken glass made them underground legends. Their follow-up Senseless Theories took things further, tossing in dystopian lyrics and hardcore urgency. But they weren't built for mass appeal. No polish, no compromise. In Destroy was DIY thrash at its most unhinged. A product of basements, beer, and backlash. They disappeared just as fast as they came, but not before leaving behind 2 records that still punch like protest in a mosh pit. If you enjoyed this dive into obscure 80s metal, don't miss our other deep dives into hidden gems from the 60s, 70s, and 80s rock scene. Check it out now and discover even more bands that history forgot. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.